Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, April 17th, 2025. Time to start it all over again. And, well, what can I tell you? It's not getting much better, but we have more to report on. The President of the United States continues to be weird and crazy. His chief advisor continues to be weird and crazy. And rich, but less rich, I guess, than he was the day before. So keep it going with the Tesla takedown. The Tesla stock continues to drop, and that's the watchword, I guess. Wise and worth doing. Whatever else. Otherwise, we just sit here powerless and read terrible news stories to one another, and that's no good. Wait a minute, that's the show. All right, well, that is good, but yet somehow, I don't know. Is it improving life? I think so. It's certainly giving life to the people who are going out and doing things and confronting people and protesting and being heard. I saw a video just a couple of days ago, actually quite impressive. I don't know if I would advise that everybody undertake the same approach, but wow. I mean, a very brave and self-confident person who, I guess, was confronting what he suspected, and I mean, maybe it was unfair. I don't even know. But what he suspected were undercover ICE agents on the subway in New York. And what they were doing there, I have no idea. I don't know whether they were just like joyriding and figuring they'd jump somebody and exfiltrate him to El Salvador or something like that. But he just, took out the cell phone and put it up and said, hey, are you guys ICE agents? And, they denied it. And he's like, oh, okay, so you're just, running around here harassing people for no reason. And, they're arguing with him. They're warning him, hey, you better watch out or we'll get you kind of, oh, yeah, really? Oh, sure, yeah. Show me your badge. Show me your badge. I mean, he was really asking for it. And surprisingly, and I guess this is the reason why it impressed me most. Well, one, just like, I'd be like, I think those guys are ICE agents. And that would be about the end of my engagement with them, more than likely. But one, I was impressed with the nerve to do that. And secondly, most impressive was the fact that they didn't actually do anything, at least not on video. I mean, who knows? Maybe they went back to that guy's house 2 days later and beat the crap out of him. I hope not. But it was of interest that, so again, I'm not recommending that everybody, do this confrontation thing. I don't know. The guy who did it was behind the camera. He sounded mild-mannered and normal, but he may have been a gigantic, UFC fighter for all I know, although most of them were MAGA. But at any rate, it was just mostly interesting that on light confrontation, and basically he was also announcing to everyone on the train car, hey, these guys are ICE, so they think they're undercover, so everyone should be on alert. And two, we're going to film them. These guys' faces will be known in the neighborhood, and they'll be less effective as ICE agents going forward, which I thought was interesting. And but again, the chief point here was they just kind of went away. They made a lot of noise. They threatened the guy a little bit, but they didn't pull any weapons. They didn't arrest him. They didn't make any overt threats against him. Then they kind of half-assedly attempted to walk off the train at the next stop. And when the guy said, oh, so that's it, huh? You're just going to walk away, huh? And one of them tried to get back on the train. It was very weird to see, but also, why are they roaming New York City? So a little bit of a warning involved in that, which I'll have to dig up the video and show it to you. I don't know why that, jumped out at me today, but many things will jump out at you today, including ICE agents, I suppose. So be on alert. I don't know. I thought that was something inspirational in a way. Don't say aspirational, but inspirational, that there are people out there who are just kind of fearless in the face of all this. And we appreciate them. I think. I don't know if I want everybody doing that. I don't want the responsibility of whatever happens to people to come down on me. But wow, I don't know. I was just very impressed. So there are some courageous people out there. And I don't know. This doesn't take any particular courage so far, anyway, what we're doing here. But it does seem to be important. And people are enjoying hearing, I guess, a friendly and sympathetic voice sharing the terrible news of the day. And okay, in that role, I think I think I'm comfortable. Greg Dworkin is here today. We can experiment with some fanfares. He had some requests about reverse fanfares. And guess what? My expert engineer was, in fact, able to reverse a couple of these things. And it sounds very impressive, but it's actually just pushing a button. But Greg Dworkin is here. We were going to, let's see, the next up in rotation just to try out. We got to experiment with these things. Let's play him in with a new one. And oh no, this is the one he doesn't like that much. Oh no,
that's a little.
Holy cow! I think we'll also want to turn the volume down on that a little bit next time. That's called Winner Sting Hollywood Fanfare. That was just next up in the rotation. However, I will say that is among the ones that we have in reverse. If you ever were wondering what that would sound like in reverse, you could probably imagine it. But
no, play it. Let's
okay.
See what it sounds like in reverse.
Very interesting. All right. You like that one?
I like the end.
Yeah, that is kind of nice, actually.
Right down the drain.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to leave now just because we played it in reverse.
No, I do.
But, okay. Well, yesterday's fanfare, I think, was the one before. It was sort of unimpressive compared to something like that, which was, I think, we went with this one. And that was very newsy sounding. And that, too, is, we're Johnny on the spot with the reverse. That is... Okay.
Yeah, good.
So,
good. I like
Paul is dead. I just want to let everybody know. Apparently that's when we do the backwards thing, that's a cultural touchstone for backwards record playing. But you kids don't know what records are.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Dead is Paul.
Yes.
You can look it up.
All right. So la la la.
So let's talk a little bit about polling. There's just a bunch of polling out, so
you love that.
Useful to do.
Yeah.
Neapolitan RMG. This is a very Republican favored poll.
R. That's the R in RMG.
R.
Is it? I don't know. Republican Marjorie Green.
Reverse engineering, I guess.
Yeah.
But this was from April 9th through 10th, registered voters. Which political party did you trust more on each of the following issues? And I think this is illustrative of the general zeitgeist. So the numbers may not be exact, but they give you an idea what's going on.
Okay.
On immigration, Republicans are favored over Democrats by 12 points, 47-35. Crime, 46-34. This is
they are better at crime.
Yeah, they do crime better because they understand it because they are criminals.
Okay.
But
only I can. All right.
Only I can do crime.
That's true. Basically, just me.
Just me.
Okay.
The idea here is these are Republican Party strong points, and Democrats have to be careful about it.
And they're interviewing a lot of Republicans.
If you have the public favoring Republicans by 12 on crime, stay away from defund the police as a motto.
Oh.
Just a general political
if that's true.
Advice. Okay.
What if it's not true?
Immigration, you have to go for fairness and not because that Carolyn Leavitt and the Republicans are going to turn look, you picked up an innocent guy off the street and threw him into a Salvadorian prison, a notorious one, and we don't even know if he's alive because when Chris Van Hollen and the Democratic senator contingent went there to talk to him, you wouldn't let him.
Yeah.
And you are being incredibly what's the proper word?
Jerky.
Look, you're being stubborn and being very jerky about responding to two separate courts.
Oh yes.
About giving us information to the point where Judge Boasberg,
they're in trouble. I mean,
is going to consider contempt charges within the next 2 weeks if you don't get your act together. And he told them that, and they're appealing his opinion that they're jerks, which is really
that's not even appealable
because he hasn't put them under contempt yet, but they're appealing anyway.
And in fact, the
I don't find the Trump administration very appealing myself,
That
but
is true.
they do. They appeal
They
themselves
love
all the
appealing.
time.
And I did see, I don't know, maybe it was Steve Vladek talking about it, but basically saying, yeah, the order that was issued that they've filed their appeal, and they're like, that's not actually one of the appealable orders.
Yeah, he said that on PBS last night.
Oh, okay.
On the news.
Well, there you go. I saw it on Blue Sky because my television is farther away from me than my computer screen. So, I don't even get to see that very much
But
anymore.
it's still not clear how that
Christmas
works out.
movies.
We're getting closer to a constitutional crisis because if the Supreme Court says, no, you have to do something about it, and the guy's not around anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's two courts doing this. Judge Zenas is right on Boasberg's heels in a totally separate case involving much of the same things.
I'm not trying to do conspiracy theory. I worry that this guy doesn't exist anymore because why else would they not let Van Hollen talk to him, be so
it's a legitimate fear,
about responding to any of the courts.
Yeah.
The Salvadorian president, the same. So, it's entirely possible.
Justice points out to me, this is true. I did see this also the same day, I think, that the Salvadorans turned Van Hollen away. They let Republicans in for photo ops. They all wanted the Kristi Noem photo standing in front of a cage full of tattooed people.
Right.
And so there were American envoys in there.
The Salvadorian president is being paid millions of dollars into his own pocket
to
probably.
Do this.
To do this.
So, two possibilities that I can think of. And one is he's just being trolly, and he's kind of like that. So it's a pretty good chance that he's saying, oh, well,
you're going to pay me to be myself? I'll take it.
Right. So I won't let Democrats in, and I will let Republicans in. But it is it's imperative that you consider the possibility that, he's dead. That was the reason there was an order not to deport him, was that the threat was that if he was returned to El Salvador, he'd be killed by gangs. That's why he had been granted political asylum. If you send him to a warehouse of gang members, that's what he was talking about. So it's a very serious chance. We just can't tell whether it's trolling or not, but that's one of those things that makes you want the guy to land in The Hague somewhere. You're not supposed to deal with humanity.
Duterte thought that he was immune, and that's not how it works.
Right. So did Ceausescu, as it happens, and Marie Antoinette,
and a bunch of Eastern European guys who like to start wars. So things eventually catch up to you, Benjamin Netanyahu. So, we'll see. The other pieces here, which are also interesting, it's just that, you have to be careful about immigration. But I guess my point was, rather than talking about the fact that, because Republicans will do it, Democrats want to put these lawless gang members back on the street, Democrats have to say, you got it wrong. You admitted you got it wrong. He's not a gang member. That's the problem.
Yes, they're lying
that is the
viciously.
Problem. You're lying. But it's also due process. What that means is
that's changing.
You're threatening to take innocent citizens like our voters, your voters, any voter,
your neighbors,
and throw them there because you're claiming the president has power to do that. And once they're out of U.S. jurisdiction, territory, then he can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's nonsense. And that's what we're fighting. And that's not that difficult. And I think that's the way to go on that. But 12 points isn't that much. It's not a 30-point, 40-point, difference.
Yeah, and not in a Republican-leaning poll either, as you pointed out.
Gun laws. Republicans have a 43 to 39 lead over Democrats. That's like a tie. Mm-hmm. That's not enough to say don't ever talk about it.
Okay.
The economy. Republicans 41, Democrats 40. Inflation. Republicans 38, Democrats 42. That's a wash. That was Trump's strong point in how he got elected. Yeah. And that will reflect in some of the other polls I'll talk about in a moment from YouGov. Education, gender identity, healthcare, climate change, abortion are all favoring the Democratic Party. Democrats have a 20-point lead on abortion. The biggest lead Republicans have is that 12 points on immigration and crime. Mm-hmm. And Democrats have a 20-point lead on climate change and abortion. Now, do people vote on climate change? A few do, most don't. Abortion, sometimes. It depends on context. Healthcare. Democrats 47, Republicans 33, and people absolutely vote on that.
Yes.
Also education, a 12-point lead. So, it's a decent environment for Democrats. And don't believe all these polls that say, well, everybody hates Democrats. No, Democrats are pissed off at Democrats, which is why the numbers are low. That changes as soon as election time comes. Next set of polls comes from Economist YouGov. Trump's approval, disapprove 53, that's up 1. Approve 45, relatively stable, that's registered voters. This is also of note. On April 9th, Trump's disapproval was 52. It's now 53. But YouGov has some historical tracking, and I gave you a couple of pictures of that, which I thought were sort of interesting.
Okay.
And one of them is net job approval among U.S. adult citizens in Trump's first term compared to Biden's first term, compared to Trump's second term.
Okay, let's see.
All right. So at this point in time, in those three terms, Trump's first, Trump's second, and Biden's only.
Yeah.
At this point in time,
let's bring him back. Yeah.
Biden approval was a +8. In his first term, Trump was a -10. In his second term, Trump was a -11.
Okay. He's
what are the points here? The point is Trump has never been popular. He's not popular now. He's on the same trajectory as he was during his first term, where he was never popular. I think only one time toward the end of the presidency, he snuck into positive territory for a day.
Yeah, like...
But for the most part, he was relatively unpopular, and he remains unpopular now. So that's the background for some of these numbers. And I think that they're important to put into context.
I wonder what day that was.
Also from YouGov, net approval of Donald Trump's handling of the economy in his first term and his second term. In his first term at this point in time, and it was never outrageously good. At one point, he had a 20-point approval. Again, toward the end of his term, when people are happy that he was leaving. But at this point, in his first term, he was a +3 on the economy. Now he's a -7.
All right. Well, there's the big
And again, this is the thing that got him elected. At the time of his election, he was a +12.
Yes. Businessman.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
But that's gone. And so, again, that's all going to be in context. They also snuck in a Canadian poll.
These sneakies. All right.
Would you support or oppose Canada becoming a part of the United States? And these are Greenland numbers.
Asking Canadians?
Asking Canadians only.
Okay.
January of 2025, 70% strongly opposed, another 7% somewhat opposed. But those numbers are 78 and 6 now.
Okay. Well.
The only people who strongly support it, 5%. And somewhat support another 6% now. So that's like 11. So again, we talked about the Canadian Prime Minister is running on being a Trumper. And I don't see how he wins with numbers like this. And neither did that Canadian pollster that I talked about that was interviewed.
How long have they been talking about this? I mean, I don't think he did this until after he was inaugurated, started really talking about annexing Canada,
Greenland,
right?
Yeah,
okay. Because Greenland came up once last time.
He started to get angry when Melania started to make eyes at Justin Trudeau a few years back. But he started talking about it after the election.
All right, yeah, that's what I thought. So I'm just looking because what struck me here was the strongly support number. One, that there is such a number. Canadians strongly supporting giving away their country. But it was 5% in January of 2025 was, I guess, probably the MAGA fans, Canadian MAGA fans watching. And I wish we had that going on. Wish we were a part of the United States. Anyway, through all the hype and the talk, and when they really started, so I'd be amazed if you could find 5% of Canadians who had ever heard of such a plan in January of 2025. But by April of 2025, hyping it to death, they're still at 5% strongly support. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They got nowhere with it. They lost everywhere else. But I mean, just among the core constituency, the kind of idiots who would tell a Canadian pollster, I support, eliminating Canadian sovereignty, and becoming MAGA America, still 5%, and not even didn't go to 6, didn't go to 4, nothing, just 5. I think, and in Canada, that's like, I don't know, 16, 17 people.
If you want to believe, and I don't, that the Democrats are the party of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, you have to hand it to Canadian conservatives.
I guess so.
Because
they'll take it anyway. It doesn't really matter whether you'll hand it to them, but they'll apologize afterwards. Sorry, I stole that.
Well, sorry. The Canadian conservatives will simply take it.
Yeah. So I'm sorry you don't deserve it.
You were thinking of handing it to me? I'll just grab it from you. That's what I do.
Okay. Well, I
don't understand why the Canadian Conservative Party simply doesn't run on annexing Greenland. We'll do it first.
Oh, yeah. Really?
That way, when Trump annexes us, he'll get both. It's a twofer.
Yeah. It might be a winning hand with Canadian conservatives.
You never know.
They certainly should do something about this Miquelon Island sitting right in the middle of their territory.
Right.
Anyway, what can you do? So good, interesting. Canadians, thank you for answering the question. You were probably busy.
Now, this is a different one.
Yeah.
And let's see who did this. It doesn't really say who. Oh, Data for Progress. It sounded like Data for Progress.
No.
This is a question about immigration, and that's why, we have a 12-point lead on immigration doesn't mean what you think it means. I don't think this means what you think it means.
I don't even know what it means.
So this is by party.
Yes.
When you ask specific questions, Democrat, Republican, or Independent third party, those are the 3 groups that they looked at. The right to be informed of the charges against them. If you are an immigrant with green cards or visas.
Yeah.
Specifically, green card and visa immigrants. The right to be informed of any charge against them. Republicans agree with that 74%. Independents in the 80s and Democrats 87.
That's it.
The right to a fair trial for immigrants with green cards and visas, that specific group.
Just
right
fair
to a fair trial.
Yeah.
Republicans agree 68%, Democrats 83%. And that matches independents. The right to present a defense. Republicans 63, Democrats 85, independents matching the Democrats in just about all these categories.
Why isn't this higher?
And the right to appeal a court decision, Republicans only give them 52%.
Oh, really? Because they're appealing everything.
Because they know they're losing.
Yeah.
82% Democrats, 74% Indies. So specific independent especially, but specific by party or in general, attitudes toward immigrants who have visas and green cards are
different
it the
right way
than so-called illegals.
As they say.
I hate the term.
Yeah.
But they separate them. They treat them differently.
They do.
Right? And then this is which of the following comes closer to your view, even if neither is exactly right?
Okay.
I like asking the question that way.
I don't know whether I do or not.
The federal government should be allowed to deport undocumented immigrants without providing evidence in a hearing, or the federal government should only be allowed to deport undocumented immigrants if it has provided evidence and a hearing.
Like they have no documents. That would be
all
evidence.
Voters, all likely voters.
Yeah.
57% agree that they're entitled to evidence in hearings.
Then do you think?
By partisanship, only 15% of Democrats think they should just check them out without any information. 83% say, no, you got to have a hearing. For independents or third party, it's 34-59. 59% say you got to have a hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And Republicans, 65% say just kick them out, but a solid 30% say, no, you have to have a hearing. So if the Democrats are 83-15 and the Republicans are 65-30, and 30% of Republicans don't approve of a Republican position, then Democrats are in a good area, a good place to challenge at least some of what's happening with immigration. So you can't take, Democrats have a 12-point deficit on immigration in a Republican poll. You can't take that at face value.
All right.
You need to be nuanced, but not so nuanced that you're not speaking English anymore. A good example of how not to do it is Democrats speaking about tariffs.
Oh.
Tariffs are bad. Well, what about this one specialized circumstance? Well, tariffs are bad, and that's the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Period. Right? Not, well, I agree with tariffs in some cases, and targeted tariffs are blah, 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 blah. No, they're bad. Trump is ruining the economy, and they're bad. And the reason Trump is ruining the economy is because they're bad. And the reason they're bad is because Trump is ruining the economy because of them. Don't step on your own message.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty simple to do, and certainly, if you feel the necessity of
what about this? Well, that's an exception.
Yeah, if you want to defend domestic industry, you can certainly say that. Look, I'm for protecting our industries, but let's do it in a way that doesn't, I'm
let's
not looking
do it with
about
industrial policy. Yeah, Paul Krugman's right. Well, what about the polls that say that union families hate these tariffs because they're ruining the economy? And auto workers are getting fired over it. Well, yeah, we agree with all of that. So, they're bad.
Right. So, good message from Krugman there. You can certainly say, I want to protect our industry, but I don't want to punish people for buying products. I want to help industries make products.
I don't want to make prices higher. That's not the way to do it.
Yeah, I want to make production
you want higher prices?
Better or something.
I thought you said you wanted lower prices. I thought that's why you elected the guy.
Yeah, it said so on the lawn signs. Kamala high prices. And
after the break, we're going to talk about blowback both from Trump to Israel and law firms to Trump.
Oh, okay. Everybody's blowing back left, right, and center.
So a lot of this stuff, again, the honeymoon's fading. A lot of this stuff is chickens coming home to roost.
That's great. And Trump went on his honeymoon with a chicken, and that's what I heard you say.
Exactly.
No rebutting that. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now for the Kagro in the Morning Show, or welcome back from the Kagro in the Morning Show. No, to the Kagro in the Morning Show. That's right. From me.
With the Kagro in the Morning.
With love, Kagro. Hello. Yeah, I don't know. I was reading something and lost track of everything. So, all right, English language, time, whatever. Okay, Greg's still here, so that's good. He's got his head screwed on right. What else have you got? Because I got nothing.
I've got the realization that in the second segment, at least, I don't have to have a fanfare. So that's a good thing.
Well, says you. We got to get, there's like 30 pages of these things on this other.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. Oh, we did the battle horn. I got to mark off which ones we did.
Well, yeah, you got to, find one you.
We'll have a second segment. Holy moly. I got to work on the volume before I subject people to that one. Medieval trumpet fanfare.
I can feel my shoes vibrating with that one.
Yeah, this has a volume button right in the page. Oh, okay, here we go.
A British warship appears over the horizon as the pirate flag flies proudly, but in reverse as they run.
You have died of dysentery.
Yeah.
The end.
And scurvy. R. So this is from the YouGov poll.
Oh, yes.
Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of foreign trade by a margin of 17 points, 54 to 38. More Americans say in their view on recent tariffs is closer to thinking they're harmful to the economy and consumers with no real long-term benefits, 48-38. So he's not winning the messaging war there. 76% of Americans think that Trump's recent tariffs will increase the price of goods they buy. 44%, a lot.
Yeah.
Only 7% expect tariffs will decrease prices. Expected price changes due to tariffs are affecting some Americans' purchasing behaviors. 22% say as a result they plan to make a purchase now, and 28% say they'll delay a purchase overall. 65% of Americans say they care about what happens in the stock market, a great deal or somewhat. So the idea is that, well, only some Americans will say it's your 401ks, dude. Everybody cares about what's going on in the stock market. When I say everybody, I mean 65%. 42% personally or jointly have money invested in the stock market. But again, I don't know if that counts their 401ks and 403bs and all the other stuff. More Americans describe the current state of the stock market as poor, 34%, than excellent or good, 21%. And 2/3 of Americans believe Trump is very or somewhat responsible for the state of the stock market. Democrats far more likely than Republicans to think he is, 64 versus 20.
Well, ordinarily you're taught not to believe that, but this is a very different situation.
Americans always believe the president.
They always do think so. They keep saying, no, it's not true. And usually it's not, in the sense that, we've got an industrial policy. There's all sorts of shakeouts from that. But this is a president who's like, these particular stocks are terrible. You should get rid of them. What?
Right. The budget proposed by Republicans and Trump is strongly or somewhat opposed by more Americans, 42%, than 35% who approve it. And of course, about a quarter are unsure. About 30% of Americans don't know their first name. At the start of Trump's first term in 2017, his budget proposal was opposed by a slightly larger margin. So it's a lukewarm response to the budget. More people oppose it than not. No, it's not overwhelming. Half of Americans think the wealthy are taxed too little. Many expect the wealthy will pay less under the new tax plan. That's not good.
Yeah, I mean, that's most likely. You're right.
How do Americans think Trump's budget will affect their taxes? 40% think it'll hurt them and their immediate family, and probably 14% think it'll help, and 25% don't know.
Those people might be right, that they don't know.
Yeah.
I think they're correct in not knowing.
So, these are not overwhelming supportive numbers. And again, somehow or other, Republicans just assume that they can rig elections in the House enough, and they do rig elections in the House. It's not conspiracy theory, that it doesn't matter.
In the House, yes.
In the House.
I see what you mean.
Gerrymandering and other things that affect House districts, but not Senate districts.
Certainly true.
Well, they only won that Senate race because of gerrymandering. No, that's not how it works.
But yeah, also in the House, the actual votes on the floor are, they're rigged in the sense of the rules for each.
Well, they're supposed to be
everything you're doing.
You expect that,
right?
You elect them to
make
rig
that clear.
House votes.
Yes.
But for House representatives in a general election,
certainly gerrymandering.
Those are many of them are unfortunately rigged, and there are very few actual swing districts anymore.
Well, yes, but the swing mechanisms are made in China, so maybe that will change.
Yeah, well, they'll stop importing them. So
right. We're gonna do our own domestic gerrymandering instead.
Right. Non-polling stuff in the news that caught my eye, besides the general sense that
general sense of dread. Yeah.
Both colleges, universities, higher ed, and law firms are beginning to fight back about what Trump is doing. This one in the New York Times was interesting. Law firms made deals with Trump. Now he wants more from them. To avoid retribution, big firms agreed to provide free legal services for uncontroversial causes. To the White House, that could mean negotiating trade deals or defending the president and his allies.
Yes, to them.
So the president is entitled to pro bono work because, he doesn't have any money.
I'm the president. Yeah, very differing ideas about these. By the way, I want to launch a possible theory. Not a lot of people. This is a very unpopular theory. Most of the reaction I've seen to this story is, well, duh, of course, he got something from you, so he's going to try to squeeze something else out from you. I do think there's some possibility out there. I mean, generally speaking, the people who rise to the top of these very large, very powerful law firms are pretty savvy individuals. I'm guessing that there are at least some of them who entered the negotiations with the idea in mind that we'll sign whatever the hell it is that they bring over here, and then we're just going to not provide those pro bono services when the time comes. Oh, no, that doesn't fall under our agreement. We're going to dispute that. But it's a question of when will he call upon us to do this? How long do we have to survive? But it was also immediately apparent with the very first such agreement that they did write something down, and the law firm circulated to its partners and associates what it believed the agreement was. And then the White House totally rewrote it and then publicly released a document that had nothing to do with the one they thought they had signed. So we were headed for another round of these stories anyway. And yeah, Trump, it's not that he may also be doing this. I got a deal out of them, now let me press them for more. He's just holding up the deal he had before and lying about the contents of it as well. And that's, I'm wondering how many law firms may actually have quietly anticipated that and said, let's sign this thing and live to fight another day, and then just deny that we
the Times interpretation is a little different, and my interpretation, of course, is a little different.
Well, that's
but
wrong.
I'm from New York.
Yeah.
I recognize that people at these top law firms have high IQs and a bunch of degrees, and I think they're all stupid.
They're like still
really stupid. They think that any agreement
world.
they make with Trump is going to hold on the surface agreement that they made, as if Trump is going to honor it in any way, shape, or form. The guy's an inveterate liar. This is part of my not understanding what these people are thinking.
Yeah, no, there's a real possibility.
He sniffs the little guy. He'll buy paint from a contractor, and as soon as the painting is done, he'll say, I don't like it, I'm not paying it. He never fulfills his part of the bargain. What part of that don't you understand?
Yeah, I am not convinced that, that they're all doing this. I think there's an outside chance that a few of them said, this isn't going to mean anything. Sign it, and it's going to be, it's going to be a point of contention forever. We're never going to get out from underneath this guy, but,
So
whatever.
Harold Hongju Ko, a professor of international law at Yale Law School, said they thought they made one-shot deals which they would fulfill. But the administration seems to think they just subjected these firms to indentured servitude.
Yes.
That's it. I mean, why would you trust Trump to agree with your interpretation?
I do not.
It doesn't matter whether it's written down or not. He's not going to do it, and if it's written down, he'll tear the paper up and say, oh, I'm not doing it anyway.
Yeah.
The emerging gap between what the firms initially thought they agreed to and what Trump says they can be used for shows how the deals did little to insulate them from his whims. That's my point. Why didn't you get that? Further demands on the firms from Mr. Trump could raise the potential for conflicts with paying clients and could further fuel internal dissension. One lawyer directly involved said he feared Mr. Trump's comments could lead to the deal's unraveling. Hello.
Well, yeah, they were supposed to.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I don't think that this is going to work all that well. At Paul Weiss and Skadden, some lawyers are concerned a showdown with the White House is inevitable. If they're pushed to provide legal work beyond what they agree to, lawyers are expected to quit. Two people said that Brad Karp, chairman of Paul Weiss, was very clear with the firm's top leadership that his agreement with Trump was essentially a codification of work that Paul Weiss already does. Mm-hmm. And other firms said the same. Karp did suggest to the White House, according to two people briefed on the matter, that Paul Weiss do work for a potential U.S. sovereign wealth fund. But in internal communications with their employees, several of the settling firms said pro bono commitments they agreed to are consistent with free legal services they already provide.
Yeah, in their view.
Some lawyers at Skadden clung to the line in Mr. London's email that said that the firm had agreed to commit $100 million of pro bono work that the president and Skadden both support.
Yes.
I don't know how you make that stick. That seems dicey. So a
Right.
firm that can survive only by staying in the president's good graces, the professors wrote in their amicus brief, as incentives that conflict with its lawyers' stringent fiduciary duties to remain
Mm-hmm.
loyal to the client, exercise independent judgment, and be truthful and candid in all dealings with the court. This is obvious to anybody who's not a lawyer. And if the lawyers want to split hairs about, well, we still are because this, that, and everything, no, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You never should have agreed to this. This is, this is all about appearance as well as what you actually do. And Columbia and other universities found that when you try to split hairs, it doesn't work.
Yeah. It's
Tariffs are bad. I mean, just get with the
yes.
program here, folks.
And I mean, there's good reason to approach any negotiation or proposed negotiation with Trump by saying negotiations with Trump are bad. The deals that come out of them are bad.
It's
the
very
negotiations
difficult
are
to
bad. Don't do them.
It's very difficult to negotiate with a serial liar.
Yes.
Here you have Baron von Munchausen, and you're supposed to make a deal with him. How?
Yeah. Yeah. So the only reason I bring up the theory is a lot of these guys, think they're clever, more clever than anybody on the planet, and might have said, I know that a Trump deal is worthless. So if it's going to get him off our back for right now, sign the deal. Who cares? It's worthless. So there's that approach to it. We're litigators. It's free for us to continue to litigate this thing. When he calls upon us, when that day comes and he calls upon us for a favor, we just say we're not going to do it. And then what is he going to do? He's going to sue us and bring the agreement to court?
Indentured servitude. Ha ha ha. That's really fun. Yeah. Well, you signed it over, bud.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. We'll see whether anybody says, I remember these guys think that they have an ace up the sleeve every time, and they'll go and they'll say, yeah, we signed a contract, an unconscionable contract, and everybody remembers from first year contracts in law school that you can't enforce an unconscionable contract, which is normally it's worth arguing, but when you're arguing with the president,
she's taking you to court over this, and she's going to do it in Texas and Florida.
That's the real problem. Is ordinarily the people with unconscionable contract clauses aren't the president and the entire United States government, and aren't able to, threaten the lives and livelihood of the judges sitting in the case. You could have taken that into consideration. That might have been wise. But then if the alternative is, well, we won't sign. All right, well, then we'll be destroyed immediately. There's got to be some strategic thinking at some level, some of which may be bad and rejected. But one of the things you would throw out in a meeting like that is, this might give us 6 weeks before we're destroyed in order to take care of our affairs.
What if, and hear me out, you're not destroyed, but you actually gain stature by refusing?
I don't know. I'm not certain that they have ever really considered the idea of, the stature and popularity of our firm at large with the public. Yeah, but I guess that's certainly true. I don't know.
I'm not talking about the public. I'm talking about your clients.
Right. That too. But remember, the clients were also threatened as well. If they stand up, if this firm stands up to us, the Trumpers, we're going to get your client list and start prosecuting your clients. All right. Well, we have a duty not to let that happen in some way.
You can't prosecute them all. I mean, it's just some of this stuff is ridiculous.
Yes. He's a ridiculous guy. So, all right. We'll see how these things play out. But, remember that these guys always think they're the biggest legal geniuses in the room.
I'll also point out I have little sympathy for healthcare companies who overcharge their patients.
Yeah.
I mean, just some stuff you shouldn't do. And if you don't have a conscience, I get that you're there for your shareholders, but it's going to catch up to you at some point.
Yes.
And that's not an endorsement of Luigi Mangione. I'm just saying,
I'm just saying he did what he did. I don't know.
Well, it ain't good.
Yeah. Well, murder, it's problematic.
That's problematic. So there's that. Now, the other blowback that we're seeing is from all places, Trump to Israel. Trump waved off Israeli strike after divisions emerged in his administration, says the Times. Israel developed plans for attacking Iranian nuclear facilities that would have required U.S. assistance. Some administration officials had doubts. They go into a very detailed plan about Israeli officials, and they wanted to attack Iranian nuclear sites in May. Here's the time. Here's the date. Here are the people.
Boy,
this is really detailed stuff here. So obviously it was leaked to the Times because they wanted it to leak to the Times.
I guess.
And this is one way of communicating with Iran. They were prepared to carry out the strikes, and at times were optimistic the Israelis were that the U.S. would sign off. The goal of the proposals was to set back Tehran's ability. Iran says this kind of stuff makes it more difficult to negotiate with you.
Yes.
Netanyahu says
So
you've
what?
embarrassed me. I don't know what's going on here, and I really don't know what the Trump administration has in mind. I don't give them credit for 3D chess here. I just don't think they know what they're doing.
So Netanyahu was upset he didn't want this revealed. Huh. I mean, ordinarily
Maybe.
you'd think no, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Nobody knows. It's the
Yeah.
Middle East.
Right.
Maybe nobody really wanted to start a war in the Middle East, and this is a good way to look tough, but somehow, grown up and adult about it. I don't know. But clearly, it was a leaked story because they wanted this story with all of its details in the press.
The leak game in the Trump administration is fraught. It is very difficult to figure out what's intentional and what's not. I'm just thinking about this alongside. I think now we're up to 3 Pete Hegseth aides suspended and at least one escorted out of the Pentagon in a leak investigation. I don't even know what leak they were investigating, but that they won't leak. But yeah,
as Yoda might say, the leak game is weak in that one.
I guess so. So yeah, I mean, I think that they're intentionally leaking some things, thinking it's a genius move, and then if it isn't a genius move, they look for underlings to fire. And I mean, I think the underlings. It's interesting. They're now creating a legion of fired leakers who are sure that that they are super loyal MAGA people and thought they were on the right side, and two, did I say A or one? A and B think they were instructed by their superiors, and in some cases Pete Hegseth, do this leak for me, and they did it, and then it gets into the papers that there was this leak. How dare you? You're fired. What? You told me to. Don't you say that.
There's gambling in this casino.
Yeah. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to it's a dangerous world to take MAGA weirdo loyalists and then pull the rug out from under them all at once for doing the bidding of MAGA world and leaving them destitute and distraught and swimming in guns.
So since we're also talking about the Middle East and Netanyahu, this article also goes on to say that the Trump administration has been bombing the Houthis since mid-March. Have we won yet? I forgot.
How many Houthis
they declared
are
we
left?
won.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, something like that.
I guess so.
But the gist of it is the U.S. is moving Patriot missile batteries, B-2 bombers. They're at Diego Garcia, an island base in the Indian Ocean, which now has a tariff on it.
These bombing runs are expensive.
They're moving additional fighter aircraft to the region, presumably to bomb the Houthis, but also to support Israel in case they want to do anything against Iran, which they just announced. So the game of, we started a war with the Houthis because that wasn't really the point. The point is now we can move all these assets there and say, it's because we're bombing the Houthis. But in fact, it's because we want to bomb Iran. And so we're not telling anybody. We'll just put a story about it in the New York Times and no one will know.
I see. It is a short hop.
I'm looking at this and I'm saying this is extraordinarily obtuse. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know why they're using this vehicle to announce this sort of stuff. Is this because Netanyahu was pushing them too much and they decided to punish him a little bit by doing this and remind him that he is dependent on? I don't know. I don't understand. There's a lot that we don't know, and so it's really hard to understand.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I can guess. I don't think so. Wow. All right. I don't know what else to say.
It's not over. That's what I could tell you. We haven't beaten the Houthis. I don't know that the sea lanes are open. I don't know that the United States has succeeded in extorting more from Europe. I do know they've driven Europe away and toward China. I know China is not buying our liquid natural gas. I know that they're not sending rare earth materials to the U.S. now, which, by the way, are used in those same fighters. I don't know how any of this is going to wind up working out in the end, but I do not feel confident that the Bush administration, the Trump administration, is in charge and knows what's going on here. I just get, I get flashbacks to Iraq and the Bush administration totally under control and thinking, yeah, no,
All
you
right.
guys really don't know what you're doing. And so maybe it would have been better to have people over at Department of Defense who know what they're doing based on their capabilities rather than their loyalty history.
We'll see. Maybe that's traditionally the way we've done things, but we're open to new ideas. Incompetence and clown makeup. Maybe that is the best combination. We haven't tried that.
So they named names. They named Gabbard and Mike Waltz, of all people, as being skeptical of these attacks. And significant debate within Trump's team about what kind of agreement with Iran would be acceptable. And
those attacks.
A whole bunch of other stuff that, you scratch your head and say, I just don't have any confidence with these guys in charge.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult I can't think of anybody that I'd be. You know what? I'm fairly confident that attacking Iran will work out beautifully under this leadership.
Sure.
No. But least of all this one. I don't know. And in combination with Netanyahu, I don't know. Well, don't do it. It's unwise, I think.
Anyway, that's about it for me for today. I will note in passing there have been comments made by those who watch these things that Harvard, Harvard University as a whole, is about as popular around the country as the Duke University basketball team, which is to say, you really love to hate them. And so the Borovitz report has Harvard to award Trump honorary doctorate for making its approval rating soar.
They have enjoyed a resurgence of late.
Really, people feeling sorry for them, happy that Harvard's fighting back. It's pretty amazing.
Right.
Harvard, I'm from the other Cambridge school. Everybody loves to hate Harvard.
I guess. Holy cow. Well, I don't know. It's it used to. I don't know. People look up to it in a certain way, but
in some ways,
the last couple of years have been kind of rough for the PR. Not that it's affected people applying to it. I am curious to see though what next year's college applicants pool looks like, and whether people are steering the best and brightest students away from places that are being targeted, or whether our brightest are going overseas for their education now. I don't know. I'm a little curious about that. They caught the current class, right in the middle of everything. They made their applications thinking everything was going to be normal. And I'm curious about now that the decisions are being made where these kids are going to go to school, whether anybody who's, say, serious about doing STEM research as an undergraduate is saying, I can't do it here, or here anymore, or maybe I can't even do it in this country anymore, or whether they think everything's going to settle down, or I don't know, I've already sent in my deposit, for instance. What am I going to do? I feel bad. Some of these kids have, they make, say, early decision, I want to go to Harvard, I want to go to Yale, I want to go to wherever it is, and were accepted and sent that deposit, and only to find out that their the schools they want to go to are now losing, or purported, I guess we should say, to have lost billions of dollars in grants. And that too, once again, back to media criticism for just a second, as Trump now threatens or allegedly, or will attempt to threaten Harvard's tax-exempt status as an educational institution, which is not something, once again, one of those things that you're not supposed to do, don't really have the power to do, but somehow generated the headlines.
Well,
was gonna do.
Mills likes to say, we'll see you in court.
Yeah. And she did, as you told us yesterday, and she won. So that's good news. Round one, anyway.
Round one, yeah.
So,
I mean,
we
you
hope
have to fear the Department of Agriculture because, they have that reputation for being just vicious.
Yeah. Well, they could drive over you with a Reaper. You don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
Okay.
Anyway, that's it for me for today.
Yes, and the week, I guess, because that's all there is.
Yeah, but we'll be back Monday, and maybe we'll sort out what's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah, we'll fix that one. Weekends are great for catching up on fixing the Middle East. Yeah, what's Jared Kushner doing these days? He's the guy who fixed it last time. So, isn't he going to come back because the world needs him?
I don't know. Trump's supposed to stiff people who don't, live up to what his expectations were. So, I don't know.
What's going to happen? Like, is there money flowing to... I guess he's got his own.
Him? Now. Oh, yeah, he's got his own slush fund.
Yeah. Is there any way Trump can cut that off? I'm just thinking.
No, it's going to have to come from Abu Dhabi or whoever is paying him or Qatar. I don't even remember.
Could probably put some jails there.
Yep.
Okay. Very good.
Anyway,
I think we're caught up.
And I'll talk to you on Monday.
All right. Great. Terrific. And thanks for all of these links, and let's transfer them over. I wish there was is there a way to macro this so you can just hit one button and everything goes boom to the permanent chat?
I don't know. I'll look before I close the meeting.
All right. Very good. So hang on. Don't close the meeting just yet. And I'll tell people other stories.
Yeah. What we should do is play the fanfare when I come in and play the fanfare backward when I leave.
Right. That would have been the idea there. So, all right. Well, where's my soundboard? Okay. Go to the reverse side. There's a second soundboard, which will play the big fancy one because we got the opportunity now. I do kind of like that.
I do like the end.
That does sound very movie award showy. Okay, great. And we're not ready for the big music just yet. But again, appreciate it. I guess we'll anyway, when we come back, which we'll be doing, and you'll understand why I say that now. There we go. As I play the music, when we come back, a second hour of nonsense and craziness with a slightly different focus to round out the day. Thanks, Greg, for coming by, and thanks for the idea of reversing the music and giving the engineering staff something fun to do. And we'll see you after the early beginning to the KITM weekend. All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and I think we're going to have all the links to the things that we need. Most of the stuff came from YouGov anyway, so that we have that link available. Okay, so here's a couple of things I wanted to catch you up on, and now I have to remember what other things did I want to say? Okay, up at the top of today's news gathering, let me update you on. And this is the thing that I threatened to tell you the story of earlier. From Politico, news that a third top Pentagon official suspended in leak investigation. That is to say that a third top Pentagon official was suspended in a leak investigation which already existed. But this is headline speak. And it made things a little bit awkward. I didn't tell you about the first one or the second one, but now there's a third one, so that's our opportunity to catch you up. Colin Carroll, I guess, is number 3 here. Chief of Staff to Deputy Defense Secretary Stephen Feinberg. Who? Yeah. Was suspended a day after 2 other people you never heard of, who are political appointees at the Pentagon, were also placed on leave. What does this mean? I don't know. But yeah, what I was saying in shorthand was a leak investigation about what leak, I don't know, netted 2 wackadoodles and now 3, a third wackadoodle, 3 wackadoodie were netted in Pete Hegseth's office alone. But of course, Pete Hegseth's office is the Pentagon, and it's the largest office building in the world. So, maybe 3 is not even a bad number. Daniel Lippman and Jack Detch reported this yesterday for Politico. The Pentagon put a third top official, and here, scare quotes, top official, but, these are good paying jobs, and they're hard to come by, especially working for the government these days. And it's funny to see them kicked to the curb. The Pentagon put a third top official on administrative leave Wednesday as part of a wide-ranging leak investigation, according to a defense official and a person familiar with the matter. Time out for just a second to just do a little bit of parsing of the whole situation here. They are put on administrative leave, not fired. Maybe they'll eventually be fired, but what has happened here is administrative leave. What does that mean? That means suspended with pay, I think. Which I just wanted, ordinarily you'd be like, well, yeah, that's the process. But screw the process. Why? Because what happened to government efficiency? How come Dodgy isn't turning off their paychecks? Administrative leave, I thought we were about efficiency and saving the government money. These guys have been basically kicked out of the building for leaking. You know the intention is to fire them. Just fire them already. Why are we paying them to sit home and play video games? Well, due process. Due process? You just told me there was no such thing. Why? Well, you're talking about immigrants. These guys are white and American white people who support Trump. So we can't just cut them off. Wait a minute. You're telling me, because let's demagogue this the way they're demagoguing the immigration story, right? There's no due process for immigrants. Well, why should there be due process for people who leak national security information from inside the Pentagon? Why, I can demagogue this just as well as anybody else. You're going to pay these guys to leak information to God knows who. Now, of course, it's okay to leak to the Russians. That's not even a leak anymore. So who did they leak it to? I don't know. We got to consult the random country generator, which, by the way, is broken. I have to go. I wonder if it's fixed itself yet. I mean, it looked like just but I don't know who administers the random country generator site, and they may have put it up 20 years ago and they never looked, and now something's not working. But I couldn't give you a random country to worry about invading, and it's still broken. There has been a critical error on this website, and it is a WordPress website, so I don't know. Who knows even if the guy who even put the thing up originally is still alive. I'm going to have to find a new random country generator. Anyway, the point is that I don't know. Well, we do know why. Brown people, bad. So let's kick them out of the country with no due process and start arguing that there might not even be any process due to them because they're brown or have committed a crime or are in this country illegally, even if they're not in this country illegally. They've been lying so viciously at the White House about this. The White House press operation, that not only, well, he had due process. No, he didn't. He didn't get brought before a judge before he was exfiltrated from the country. Well, at one point he did have one hearing. Yeah, a hearing in which a judge said, don't deport this guy ever. That he had. What happened to honoring that? But yeah, the Republican strategy is to go on when they're pressed on this stuff. How come this guy had no due process? Oh, he had due process. No, he didn't. Well, he had my version of due process, which is to say he did a guilty thing, so we kicked him out. No, he didn't. And of course, now we have Pam Bondi saying this guy is not only is he accused. Well, a normal person says he's accused of being a gang member. Pam Bondi, Caroline Levitt say he is a gang member. But not only that, Pam Bondi saying he's a top leader of MS-13. What? We're not even sure he's in it. In fact, we're pretty sure he isn't, because as it turns out, the one piece of evidence that there is, every time you ask Pam Bondi, what's the evidence? She says, well, we have this thing from the court hearing. There's a police report. And the police report, again, remember, is one, I spoke to another guy, and that guy who was also arrested. We arrested 3 guys for loitering. One of the other 2 guys said, I think that guy's in MS-13, which may or may not have been an attempt to say, well, if you let me go for the loitering, I'll tell you he's in MS-13. He's not, but I'm going to say it anyway. I want to get out. Second of all, even the police who took the report are like, I don't think so. I think that guy was just trying to feed us some information so we would let him go on the loitering charge. And third, the cops who took that report, who did say, I don't even believe that thing, apparently were also, one of these cops anyway, was essentially fired for gross misconduct. And, Was it misconduct with respect to this case? I don't think so, but just generally speaking. Okay, so a cop who has been fired for gross misconduct also took this report and said, I don't even believe this report. That's the big evidence. And now he's morphed into top leadership. He's the Al-Qaeda number 2 all of a sudden. So, plus, there's many other aspects to the ludicrous nature of the accusation. He had a Chicago Bulls hat. Like, yeah. Well, he's not from Chicago. And the Bulls suck. So what is he wearing that hat for? He likes the graphic on it? Well, it's a well-known sign of being in MS-13. Does any MS-13 person think so? No, I guess not. Well, he has tattoos. Yeah, well, he's and by the way, he was also between him and the other people that they were deporting, saying, "Oh no, they're not in MS-13. They're in Tren de Aragua," and you can tell from the tattoos and the Tren de Aragua people, to the extent that they comment to the press, I guess, a little bit like Antifa. We're not, we don't have press representatives, but apparently tattoos not a part of their identification either. Anyway, I'm in the wrong place. We should be talking about the white people not getting fired and getting their due process by being put on administrative leave when they're accused of leaking. What happened? Number 3 here, Colin Carroll, Chief of Staff to Deputy Defense Secretary Stephen Feinberg, was suspended a day after 2 other political appointees were placed on leave following a probe into potential leaks of sensitive information. Maybe we'll find out what the information is. The leaks under investigation include military operational plans for the Panama Canal. Okay. What was the one that they leaked accidentally? Oh, yeah, right. The Houthi small group. Okay. So that's a Yemen thing. Not the Panama Canal. So they leaked the Yemen thing by accident, sort of kind of on signal. But this leak involved operational plans, which is what was made the Yemen thing so serious, right? These are operational plans that you leaked to the Atlantic magazine. So using the same terminology for what got leaked here is of some interest. Panama Canal, then also about a second carrier headed to the Red Sea. Okay, I mean, that may or may not have anything to do with Yemen, right? Because, I mean, they're on the Red Sea, so it's interesting that they would choose to put it that way. A carrier being sent to the Red Sea. And I mean, I guess a lot of things border the Red Sea. Much of it is Saudi Arabia, so I don't know that we'd be doing that. But anyway, probably a Yemen thing. It's just interesting that it doesn't get mentioned in the Yemen context. And Elon Musk's controversial visit to the Pentagon to discuss China and a pause in the collection of intelligence for Ukraine, according to the official. Okay. So some interesting things there. Military operational plans for the Panama Canal, which, remember, Trump is threatening to invade and take over, so that would be problematic. You don't want to let those plans be leaked. Another carrier to near Yemen. You don't want those plans leaked either, even though you were leaking them on signal. And then, remember Elon Musk was going to come to the Pentagon and be briefed on China. And then everybody said, what are we briefing that guy on China for? And they said, oh, but he's not coming to... No. Okay, so that might have been just a matter of crossing the wires. And the guys thought they were doing Elon and Hegseth a big favor and may or may not have been instructed to actually release that information. And then when there was blowback, you're fired. And then what else? Pause in collecting intelligence for Ukraine. That's, I guess we figured they were doing that because they hate Ukraine and they want Russia to win. Carroll and the Defense Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Why not? Why didn't they just leak a comment? Carroll, a Marine Corps Reserve officer, and he's pictured here, but in civilian garb, recently worked at Anduril, oh boy, a defense contractor that specializes in autonomous systems, like the one that fired him. A bot fired you. Politico had reported that he was fired by the Biden administration. Where? When? Recently? He fired from what? The Marine Corps Reserve? I don't understand. Fired by the Biden administration for creating a hostile environment while chief operating officer of the Pentagon's former Joint Artificial Intelligence Center. Okay, so he was in government at the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, fired by the Biden administration for creating a hostile work environment, which I gather meant harassing women there. And then he moved to Anduril, a defense contractor specializing in autonomous systems, so that he could build robots that would harass women, I guess. And then the Trump administration brought him back and put him into, what was the role? Chief of Staff to Deputy Defense Secretary Stephen Feinberg. Whereupon, within a matter of weeks, he found himself fired again. This guy seems to be a problematic employee. Dan Caldwell, a senior advisor to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Darren Selnick, the Defense Department's deputy chief of staff, a lot of deputy chiefs of staff around here, were escorted out of the Pentagon. Both of them. I only heard about Caldwell being escorted out, but Selnick, no. Yes, Darren Selnick also escorted out of the building by security officers, and those would be, I guess, well, I don't know. They didn't say MPs. Does the Pentagon contract out just basic security? I mean, they got a whole army. Do they really need to pay somebody else to provide security at the Pentagon? Dodgy. Look into that, will you? Anyway, they were escorted out of the building by security officers and had their building access suspended pending further investigation. The official said. Caldwell and Selnick both previously worked at Concerned Veterans for America. Do you recognize it? That was the nonprofit that Hegseth once led. But he was too drunk, and they kept firing him. And this is where these are two. Well, maybe they didn't leak anything. Maybe these are just two people with personal knowledge of what a drunken a-hole Hegseth was when he worked at Concerned Veterans for America. I like disgruntling them. This sounds good. The incidents added fuel to Democrats' calls for Hegseth to resign. Many demanded the Pentagon chief step down after he shared sensitive details in a Signal chat with top officials about U.S. military strikes in Yemen. I wonder if this is, I guess it is possible. They may be saying maybe we can distract from the defense secretary leaking sensitive military operational details by firing 3 other people for leaking sensitive military details. Although it just since none of them were Yemen, really, except the one about the carrier going to the Red Sea. It wasn't about this airstrike. I guess it just says, well, actually, the whole system is rife with leakers, top to bottom. Anyway, this is now the second major breach of classified information by the most senior political appointees in Hegseth's 2 months of leadership at DOD. Representative Daniel Goldman of New York wrote in a post on X, where he should not be, he should never have been appointed based on merit alone, but now he is a national security threat. Hegseth must resign. And, if you're worried about his reaction to being forced out, and I'm sure it would be negative, and I'm sure he's got tea to spill, but if you're worried about it, just roofie him and take him out of the building or leave him in El Salvador, and then he'll be less of a problem. If you think he's got loose lips, slip him a Mickey and send him to San Salvador. I mean, I think that's legal now. I'm just saying. I'm just working within the... I didn't make the rules. I'm just working with the ones I've been given. Speaking of, I don't know, nothing. Speaking of how terrible Republicans are. Oh, this will give us an opportunity to change directions and put something on the record that needs to get there quickly. So consider this a segue. And a report on an update on the Republican squad that's out there, basically added under the every Republican accusation is a confession story. Down in Florida, where the Florida men live, comes the story from the Bradenton, Florida Patch. You remember Patch.com? It's still out there. And Tiffany Razzano with the Patch staff for Bradenton has this story. Florida governors, you remember who that is, right? DeSantis, Meatball Ron DeSantis. Florida governor's former spokesman accused of exposing himself 4 times. So that's, he's really making an effort. And his name is Frederick Piccolo Jr., which if it's indecent exposure you're talking about, Piccolo, I don't know if that's the name you want to go with, but it's whatever. I would have changed that a long time ago, especially if I were like, I really love exposing myself. Maybe Piccolo isn't the name I want to go. Maybe, contrabassoon or something like that. It's baritone, something bigger than the piccolo if you're going to be exposing yourself. But who knows what psychological damage led to. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg in this case. Frederick Piccolo Jr., by the way, a former Ron DeSantis spokesman, faces charges in Sarasota and Manatee counties for exposing himself, records show. And we don't mean exposing himself to ultraviolet light and its damaging byproducts. We mean, well, he did do that. I guess that's true. And now he's just going to get, I guess, penis cancer as well. So anyway, what goes around comes around, I guess you might say. But he's not just a former DeSantis spokesperson, which is bad enough, but he's also a former New College of Florida official as well. Or no, he's a former spokesman, but a current New College of Florida official, which may mean he's been exposing himself to the kids on campus, which is just another one of those every Republican accusation is a confession things, if so. Well, anyway, he faces multiple charges for exposing himself, according to reports. Frederick Joseph Piccolo Jr., teeny tiny Piccolo Jr., 47 years old, so he's just a kid. You got to let him off at this point. Was arrested Tuesday for exposure of sexual organs. Yeah. Hey, check out my triceps. No, of course it's the sexual organs, but okay. I'm glad for the specificity. Charged in Manatee County, jail records show. He faces 3 similar charges from October in Sarasota County, according to records, which I guess means that he's been exposing himself, I guess, to who knows who he's exposing himself to, but been doing it since October. So like before Halloween, before the election, the whole bit, he's running around exposing himself. And then they're like, why don't we let him work the next semester too? New College told ABC 7 that Piccolo, who served as the school's director of media and marketing, and that's bad marketing really, was no longer employed there, at least now. In his latest arrest, Piccolo exposed himself to a woman after asking her for directions while driving through the Lakewood Ranch it says County Club, but I imagine Country Club. On March 28th, WTSP reported she picked him out as the suspect in a photo lineup. Do you recognize this man? Yes. Up here, ma'am. Yes, I do recognize it. All right. Well, I don't think it's a wiener lineup. But okay. He was previously accused of exposing himself to employees at stores in the University Town Center, including a Banana Republic. No pun intended. A Banana Republic on August 22nd and twice at Dillard's. What's Dillard's? Is that a shop, supermarket? On September 3rd and 4th, reports said. So, it was summer. It's very hot. I got to take my shorts off, whatever. And then like Labor Day weekend in Dillard's. What is Dillard's? I'm kind of curious. I'm going to look it up. Oddly enough, it's a clothing store. So, and maybe he was just saying, do you have anything that will fit my Piccolo Jr.? Sir, the changing rooms are over there. But it's in University Center. I don't know if that has anything to do with New College or not. But that way it would just be that much more fun if he was exposing himself to the students. So I'd feel bad for the students. Can't really wish that nonsense on anybody. Piccolo previously served as communications director for DeSantis' office, as well as for the Florida Speaker of the House, and probably just wore pants the whole time. He resigned from his role with the governor at the end of 2020 after receiving backlash for downplaying the COVID-19 pandemic. Hey, mask that thing, buddy. Piccolo responded to a gallery of COVID-19 victims on what is now X, previously Twitter, with, quote, I'm wondering, since 99% of COVID patients survive, shouldn't you have 99 photos of survivors for every one fatality? Otherwise, you're just trying to create a narrative that's not reality. It's an attempt. But what can I tell you? If 99% of people don't pull down their pants in a Dillard's, shouldn't you be talking about those people? Isn't it really? Okay. I don't know. His attorney, Eric Reisinger, blamed the recent allegations against him on a medical condition. They're not talking about it being a piccolo. That is a medical condition, but that's not the one that caused him to expose himself, you see. What medical condition is it? I don't know. Telling News 6 in a statement, I would like to inform you that my client, Frederick Piccolo, has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. I didn't realize that was about exposing yourself. I must also advise that the medications prescribed by his medical team have regrettably resulted in compulsive behavior and hypersexuality as side effects. Well, that might be a thing. I don't really know. But, well, you can't put lying past all these guys either. They could just be, lying out their ass, which is a lot easier if your pants are down, I must say. You're not filtering. Well, anyway, you get the idea. Could this be a medical tragedy? Yeah, maybe. But, since we're post-evidence now and we hate due process, I say we just, throw the guy down the stairs. I'm just playing with the rules I've been handed here. So this brought us down to Florida. It's time to catch up on something else that's going on down in Florida. And for that, I have, let's see. I got something from the Sun Sentinel, but I might have to. We'll see whether this opens up or whether I have to find a gift link to this one. I've got a link directly to the thing, but I think it told me, it might be one of those things you can only read once, and it might be one of those sites that say if you read it once, you get one article. You only get one look at one article. I'm not real sure. Let's see if we can't get these things out of the way and read this story because this is important. At last, it says, Republicans hold DeSantis accountable. This is an opinion piece, in case you were wondering about this weird headline. Scott Maxwell is the opinion haver who wrote this thing. And here's the deal. It's hard to overstate how serious and shocking, and when we say something is shocking, we usually need dramatic music for it. You're right. It's hard to overstate how serious and shocking it is to see Ron DeSantis on the ropes in Tallahassee. For years, watchdogs and journalists have documented questionable behavior by the governor and his administration. No-bid contracts, hidden records, deals for insiders, and ethics laws blatantly ignored. And I'm sure that he thought that this was safe in the Trump era. And then he thought it was safe in the Biden era, too, because if he got caught, he would say, I'm being politically persecuted. For years, DeSantis' fellow Republicans looked the other way, but not anymore. Good. DeSantis and his wife, Casey, are now facing serious charges from members of their own party. This isn't just another political squabble. Republican House members say they suspect criminal activity and have vowed to subpoena the governor's former chief of staff, who's now the attorney general, because we stole Pam Bondi, and promoted her to the big leagues. They're going to do all of this in order to get some of the answers that they're looking for. If you're not yet stunned, please reread that last sentence. The Republican House now wants to subpoena the state's attorney, or rather, it's not just the state's attorney. Wants to subpoena the state's attorney freaking general. Freaking is right in there. That is unprecedented. Maybe for Florida. It's probably overdue as well. The new AG, James Uthmeier, is that right? Uthmeier, Uthmeier, has a history of thumbing his nose at the laws he's now supposed to enforce. That does sound familiar. He did, I guess, probably come up under Pam Bondi, but the President of the United States is thumbing his nose at all of this as well. He tried to hide his cell phone records last year, apparently, prompting a judge to order him to turn them over. It appears Uthmeier was involved in the scandal that's unfolding in the state capitol. And in case you haven't been following the scandal, and we have not, but that's about to change, it involves a program called Hope Florida that Casey DeSantis started with help from her husband, allegedly as a way to connect struggling Floridians, and how could there be any really, struggling Floridians with private nonprofits instead of relying on government assistance, even though he was the governor. You'd think he'd want them to be reliant on government assistance, but apparently not. But the administration has been unwilling to provide full details about what it has done with all the public money involved. And that's where the problems begin to arise. That was already a giant red flag, but it now appears some of the money may have been redirected to political campaigns, which GOP legislators say could be criminal, especially if it was not directed to their campaigns. That would be non-criminal, you see. The story started with the basic questions of transparency. As the Sentinel reported, Hope, Florida, refused to provide a full accounting of its finances despite repeated requests from the Orlando Sentinel and other news organizations. But it wasn't just the media. The state's own legislative analysts said they couldn't get answers either, concluding that the Department of Children and Families, which oversees Hope, Florida, had not complied with accounting and reporting laws.
Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue with this opinion piece from the Sun Sentinel, which outlines the burgeoning crisis for the DeSantis family down in Florida. Basically, establishing a nonprofit, the first lady, as it were, of Florida, establishing some project on the outside, but just couldn't help, allegedly, raising concerns and red flags about possible corruption by failing to be transparent about what was going on. And it's a double dose here. If I don't know what faded out on our way to commercial here, but the story involves, as it says here, basic questions about transparency. And it started with the Sentinel reporting that this organization that Casey started, Hope, Florida, had refused to provide a full accounting of its finances despite repeated requests from the media. But then in addition, the state's own legislative analysts said that they couldn't get answers either, concluding, are you ready? I just want to reemphasize this, that the state's Department of Children and Families, which oversees Hope, Florida, also had not complied with accounting and reporting laws. So not only was Hope, Florida, obfuscating and hiding its financial records, but the state agency that oversees their work was also flouting the law, I guess probably at the direction of the governor is the implication. We think you may know that Hope, Florida is cheating. Give us your information on Hope, Florida. No. Well, holy mackerel, that's got to be coming from somewhere, and probably it's the husband of the chief of Hope, Florida, who happens to be the governor. You see how the problem explodes at that point, right? Keep in mind, DeSantis removed other public officials when he claimed they violated laws, even when there was no proof that they did, because who the hell cares about due process, right? Yet here, the state's own analysts reported that they requested all statutorily required documents for the purpose of this analysis, but DCF did not provide them. So what is there to hide? Well, that brings us to the mysterious $10 million. Everyone loves a mystery. When the mystery is about $10 million, it's just that much more exciting. The Tampa Bay Times and Miami Herald. This is interesting. Like every newspaper in Florida is on this trail. I mean, this is kind of flown under our radar because that's where Florida is. It's under us. But this is turning out to be maybe a major incident for DeSantis. You stick around long enough, they're going to get you eventually. I mean, that's the case with most politicians. Really, I mean, I guess you want to say both sides of the aisle, but basically, if you're around long enough, someone's going to accuse you of something. And, Meatball Ron has been overreaching for quite a long time. Anyway, so now the Tampa Bay Times and Miami Herald reported that the DeSantis administration, without seeking permission from legislators, directed $10 million in money from a Medicaid legal settlement to the Hope Florida Foundation. Then that foundation gave $10 million to political committees controlled by Utmeyer and the Florida Chamber of Commerce that were fighting the marijuana amendment that DeSantis vowed to defeat last year. So they got a Medicaid legal settlement, the state did. And then without asking the legislators and appropriators, he directed $10 million to the Hope Florida Foundation. And then the Hope Florida Foundation just laundered it into political contributions to fight about a marijuana ballot initiative, I guess. So, by the way, the Sentinel here has some, promotional links to other related pieces, including one entitled Casey DeSantis touts Hope Florida as a way off welfare, but the state won't back up her claims. And another that says, here's where $10 million donation to Casey DeSantis' Hope Florida effort went. We got the short version of it here in this article. Let's be clear, under no circumstances would it be appropriate for public money to be spent on political campaigns, which is what they just said they did, laundering it through Hope Florida. But now GOP legislators are saying it may have been more than simply inappropriate. It may have been illegal. Representative Alex Andrade, I don't know whether this is Andrade or not, it's Andrade, of Pensacola, said the money moving, quote, looks like criminal fraud by some of those involved, unquote. House Speaker Daniel Perez said it, quote, looks as if it could be illegal, unquote. And, it may be that Ron DeSantis has just overstayed his welcome at the top of the Florida Republican apparatus, and some of these guys would like a chance to be governor or run for Senate or whatever in the near future. And throwing DeSantis overboard, it may just be time. That would be fine with me. The governor and Utmeyer said they did everything by the books, sure. Though Utmeyer largely deflected a question about the issue during a press conference Monday in Orlando, DeSantis has reacted with fury, that's his usual standard play, accusing Republican legislators of trying to smear him and his wife and to, quote, sabotage a good program. Shame on you in the Florida House and your terrible behavior and leadership, he said. He even accused these hardcore conservative lawmakers of being the most awful thing he could imagine, liberal. Yikes. Well, okay, burn all the bridges. That's fine. You may just find that someone's going to tie you to one of those bridges that's already on fire or whatever, but, go for it. Yet one thing that caught my eye last week, our writer tells us, was when, in the midst of his name-calling, DeSantis, a guy who rarely admits any wrongdoing, also said the program would, quote, take care of the paperwork. And in almost everything, DeSantis thinks he can mimic Trump and use that as a path to success. I mean, it was worthless to him in his abortive presidential campaign and didn't even get him put on the short list for vice president. Just got him in trouble. But anyway, one of the things that I guess he's decided to copy is the lack of interest in completing any paperwork. So apparently there is some paperwork to take care of. DeSantis tried to downplay any potential problems by saying, quote, while you're worried about filing paperwork, which he's supposed to be worried about, we're worried about lifting Floridians up. But again, let's be clear, the paperwork is required by law. Also, while everything here may have been above board, and it probably wasn't, paperwork is at the center of virtually every white-collar and political crime ever committed. That is a good point, sir. Maybe there's nothing to see here. Maybe the DeSantises have created the most pioneering, legal, and effective program in the history of welfare reform. Maybe. If so, that's all the more reason for them to be transparent and accounting for every dollar. Be a good example. Show people the way. How is it that you've been so successful, Mrs. DeSantis? I won't tell you. Is that really a great way to... you can't even build that into a bio that you can use to run for office later on. I built the most successful nonprofit transition welfare to work program in the country. Where everyone else has failed, I've succeeded. Really? How? Short book. Anyway, unfortunately, secrecy is a defining trademark of this administration. In the past, when journalists and watchdogs requested and usually sued, and successfully at that, for access to public records, Team DeSantis responded by attacking the people making the requests. Some GOP lawmakers laughed along at the time, but now that GOP lawmakers are the ones being denied public records and being called names, they don't find it so funny. Oh, boo-hoo. I'm glad the leopards are eating your faces. So they're finally pushing for the kind of checks and balances they've never before demanded. That's way overdue for Florida taxpayers and may spell serious trouble for a governor who has, until now, been able to do pretty much anything he wanted. So I find that to be extraordinarily good news. I hope it pans out, and I hope it causes him problems for a long time to come, and maybe, just maybe, liberates Florida from the DeSantis grip one of these days real soon. All right. Just needed to get you read into the burgeoning crisis in Florida. And now we can turn elsewhere. Let's see what other things. I've got to, again, open some of these things up. And, this is a short hit that I can get on the record here. Or at least, a short hit from the Blue Sky Post, from the Washington Post. You could then read the story and get the inside view. An exclusive report that Ed Martin, remember Ed Martin? Now the interim, they aren't using the word acting for whatever reason, although we can always use it so we can play, acting. The interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, important guy, did not disclose his RT and Sputnik appearances from 2016 to 2024, that's like 8 years worth of appearances, right? To the Senate. The State Department has said the networks act like arms of Russian intelligence, which they do. And, from time to time, I'm sure people take random media requests and go, I think I might even have done something that ended up on RT, although I think I was approached, and this I think one time I got asked by a guy who had a regular show there, hey, come on and discuss I think we were probably talking about nuclear option stuff way back when. And I think it was clear that it was from RT, but RT was kind of a enigma at the time. Like, what do we make of Russian television in 2009, 2010? It's becoming clear that it's not, the new Russia anymore. It's back to the old Russia, but we weren't quite so clear on what RT was about. And then by 2016 or so, it was kind of poison. Anyway, that was when he started doing his appearances there. And apparently, according to the blurb here that comes along with the post, Trump's D.C. U.S. Attorney pick appeared on Russian state media over 150 times. Trump nominee Ed Martin's 100-plus appearances on Russian state-directed media RT and Sputnik between 2016 and 2024 alarmed some former national security officials. So I don't think I'm going to dive into the entirety of the article there. I just kind of want to put that on the record and see where that goes and whether it develops into a bigger story. Anything, that points out the ridiculous history of Ed Martin, well worth it. I think we began reading a profile of his activity some time ago, and I guess his nomination for taking on the job permanently is still pending. And I think this article hints that his nomination looks to be in some trouble, which would be great news. All right, a couple of other things I wanted to pick up on. I think with respect to let's say the happenings in court around the extraordinary rendition cases for in most cases people with legal status being accused of being illegal in their status and shipped off to El Salvador. There's a lot happening. As Greg mentioned, there are two different courts gearing up for bringing contempt charges against various members of the administration. And it's really, we're in the stage of essentially handing the attorneys from the DOJ the option of naming names. Who will it be who gets accused of contempt of court? And what will happen if they are accused? I mean, one of the problems usually with contempt of court, particularly if it's happening in a courtroom in D.C., or it's near environs, they will be, even if it's not, even if it's outside of it, they'll be prosecuted ordinarily by the U.S. attorneys or the Department of Justice itself, who, can instruct their prosecutors simply not to bring those charges. But we read a couple of weeks ago that there are ways around that the judges can, in fact, appoint their own special prosecutors, even from private practice, deputize them as special prosecutors to prosecute contempt charges when you're bringing charges against the people who ordinarily are in charge of deciding whether or not to bring charges. So there is that. I wanted to remind you of that. And I put aside a piece here from Joyce Vance in her Substack, sort of discussing the background of that situation, which I thought might be of some help. She begins, and this is from late March of this year, writing, in July of 2007, she begins, I was the appellate chief in the U.S. Attorney's Office in North Alabama when Judge William Marsh Acker, may he rest in peace, I suppose he has since died, requested that my office prosecute Dickie Scruggs, it's a real name, for criminal contempt. Scruggs was a well-known Mississippi lawyer with a civil case before Judge Acker involving allegations of insurance fraud that impacted Hurricane Katrina victims. I've definitely heard the name Dickie Scruggs before, but I couldn't tell you, whether I thought he was a country musician or what, or a NASCAR driver. Who is this guy? Judge Acker believed Scruggs had violated the terms of an injunction entered that required Scruggs to turn over documents in his possession. The then U.S. attorney in Birmingham declined to prosecute. That didn't end the matter, though. And what happened next is instructive for those wondering how Judge James Boasberg, or Judge Zinnis later on, might handle a similar situation in the Alien Enemy Act case, where the government seems disinclined to provide factual information regarding contempt allegations the judge is reviewing. In our situation, Judge Acker did what he was entitled to do under the federal rules. He appointed 3 attorneys in private practice to act as special prosecutors in the case, pursuant to Rule 42A of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. He directed them to file charges. The case moved forward in front of Senior Judge Roger Vinson after Scruggs was charged with violating the terms of the injunction. Although Judge Vinson ultimately dismissed the contempt charges against Scruggs, it wasn't because of the unusual move by Judge Acker to appoint private lawyers to prosecute the case. In fact, Judge Vinson expressly noted that was proper. In footnote 6 to his order, quote, the Supreme Court has authorized the use of special prosecutors for criminal contempt. Scruggs attempts to get mileage out of the fact that the U.S. attorney declined to prosecute, but that is exactly what the Young case, and Rule 42 contemplate. A court ordinarily should first request the appropriate prosecuting authority to prosecute contempt actions and should appoint a private prosecutor only if that request is denied. You are instructed also to see Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure 42A2. The court must request that the contempt be prosecuted by an attorney for the government, and if the government declines the request, the court must, it says, appoint another attorney to prosecute the contempt. That option would be on the table for Judge Boasberg, too, if he were to refer the matter for contempt proceedings, and the Justice Department as it almost certainly would, declined to play ball. Criminal contempt, and that is in the offing here. I'm not certain that's my favorite option, but I think it's the first option, believe it or not. I know a lot of people were making more of the fact that they were opting for criminal contempt than they ought to. Civil contempt is actually the stiffer penalty. That is to say, you're thrown in jail until you comply, as opposed to being thrown in jail for a period of time to punish your noncompliance. But I think it's actually the first step here, and if it fails for whatever reason, you can always go to the civil contempt route. But anyway, criminal contempt is designed to protect the institutions of our government and enforce their mandates. To prove contempt, prosecutors have to establish that the court entered a reasonably specific and lawful order that was willfully violated by the person being charged. And of course, you also have to identify a person being charged at this stage. Judge Boasberg's oral order, no, they don't have to be in writing to be enforceable, included a directive to turn planes around if necessary. And if, as it appears to be is the case, that some government functionaries knowingly violated that order, then the judge might want to vindicate the court's interest in having its orders obeyed with a prosecution. One caveat, because this type of contempt is criminal, there is some possibility that Donald Trump could use the pardon power to give a pass to anyone charges are brought against. He could even issue a pardon early on to prevent a full inquiry. However, in a recent letter to Trump regarding the importance of complying with court orders, Congressman and constitutional law scholar Jamie Raskin noted that, quote, the president may be unable to pardon a federal employee if found in contempt pursuant to the court's inherent authority, because such an offense may not qualify as an offense against the United States under the Constitution's Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1. See what we're talking about here? The question of whether or not contempt of court is actually a crime against the United States, which would ordinarily fall under the pardon power. This is contempt, not contempt of the United States, it's contempt of court. Although that's a lot clearer if you use civil contempt. I mean, this is a theory, but you're going to have to get it past the Supreme Court. So I don't know. Anyway, that means there would at least be litigation over the extent of the pardon power in this unusual situation. And that would mean a full airing of the facts and exposure of the Trump administration employees involved in pushing for the deportations, which we are now learning included women and people who weren't gang members, despite the administration's claim that they were all violent criminals. There is also the prospect of the court imposing civil sanctions. The pardon clause does not apply to civil sanctions, which could also be imposed. And if I can interject here for just a second, jump off track, why was it important to even point out that some of the deportees sent down to El Salvador under this secret agreement, so far secret agreement, included women? We understand why it's important that it involved people with no criminal records, but why women? I bring that up to point out that I guess President Bukele of El Salvador at some point rejected accepting the women because he wasn't. I don't know whether. I guess it's a male only facility, this prison that he's imprisoning people in. So he rejected taking the women who had been exfiltrated to El Salvador. I don't know what happened to them, but I bring that up only to point out that even under the terms of this secret contract, there are people who have been sent with the intention of imprisoning them in CCOT by the United States to El Salvador that President Bukele on his own authority has said, no, don't put them in here. I don't know what you want to do with them. I don't know whether he sent them back or not. But now that he's pretending that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is beyond even his control, nothing I can do. He's being imprisoned at your directive. Well, you got a directive to imprison these women and you didn't do it. And apparently there have been other people returned along the way. And so there's precedent for it. And I don't know. We're just not talking about it for some reason because we're too busy focusing on the outrage. And why not? But And he's not going to be bound by precedent. There's nothing we can do to turn that precedent into action. But it is interesting to point out that clearly he's lying about a lot of things, and so are a lot of people. Anyway, there is, of course, just to return to Joyce Vance's writing, there's the civil contempt route too, which could also be resorted to later on. The courts are not entirely paper tigers when it comes to holding the White House and the executive branch of government accountable. They may not have armies, but they do have contempt powers. As Raskin also noted, judges can even impose terms of imprisonment or confinement on federal employees or officials. In fact, in a 1997 brief to the D.C. Circuit, the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. acknowledged that imprisonment of agency officials was a viable option to ensure executive branch compliance with the law. This situation feels familiar. It's more of Trump against the rule of law. The government not only appears to have flouted Judge Boasberg's temporary restraining order, it's also stonewalling him as he tries to get to the truth of that matter. Of course, this is only an early procedural skirmish. As we have seen frequently with this administration, judges are using TROs meant to only last a few days or a couple weeks at most to prevent government from doing damage that cannot be undone while the court gets a baseline on the case. It's easy to see why that is so necessary. Here, there are hundreds of people in an El Salvadoran hellhole prison who had no due process to ensure they were, in fact, deportable before the government herded them onto planes. But whatever the outcome here, the case will continue to a decision on the merits. The government is likely to lose. The Alien Enemy Act applies only when the United States are at war. I like that. And we are not currently in a declared war with any foreign country, let alone a Venezuelan gang. This early procedural issue is a test for what's to come, whether the Trump administration will comply with court orders. It is truly remarkable that we're asking that question and a measure of how lawless this administration is, but it is a necessary question. So far, the administration has at least paid lip service to the notion of appealing instead of disobeying. Forcing the administration to comply with judicial review may not seem like a lot, but right now it's everything. The more pushback there is against the view that judicial decisions that run contrary to this administration's policies are illegitimate, the better. And there has been far too much talk of impeaching judges simply because their decisions interfere with Trump's agenda than a democracy can tolerate. Democracy, we are being reminded as protests crop up across the country, is a participatory exercise. If you want one, you have to work at it. As some people begin to gear up for early April protest marches, others are attending town halls thrown by their Congress members or others as well as holding empty suit meetings with members who refuse to face their electorate. Still others are calling Congress, creating their own ads to make a point on social media, and continuing to engage in civil discourse with the people around them. What we're learning is that it has the potential to work, that we can step in for the absent guardrails in the White House and Congress, that we can support federal judges who are under attack, and that we can unite with people who we may not agree with on policy issues to defend democracy itself. It's a very uncertain and difficult time, but the outlook is not entirely bleak. We have each other. Thank you for being a part of Civil Discourse. That's, of course, her Substack there. And then a big pitch to support her work to wind things up. Well, you can certainly indulge and read that if you like. Everyone deserves to make a pitch for their support, but we're running low on time here, and we'll jump out at this point. Well worth doing. Another sort of random thing that we probably, will end up having to pay attention to. Very stupid and weird, but I just wanted to make mention of the fact that after years of complaining and griping about it, Trump has finally, I'm wondering why this didn't happen earlier, found himself presented with another executive order / weird document of indeterminate authority to attack the problem of low-flow shower heads. You go in the shower and you can't get the shampoo out. This has been like a hobby horse for him for years. And he's actually gone ahead and done it. And Jason Schwartz writes at Slate, something we'll perhaps give some time to tomorrow since it's running out. The real danger, how about that? Not the fake danger, but the real danger of Trump's war on low-flow shower heads. There's actually more to it than just being ridiculous. Apparently, And I don't know. I guess we're kind of out of time really to bring it up, but the First Amendment, he begins, guarantees the public's right to petition the federal government to address wrongs. That fundamental constitutional right helped motivate Congress to secure a role for the public to participate in the federal rulemaking process by submitting written comments on proposed regulations. This is kind of weird, but yeah. But now the Trump administration is threatening to undermine the public comment process like no prior administration has in 80 years. So yes, we're very late on our exit music. We got to get started on that. In purporting to unilaterally, I don't know what, do away with low-flow shower heads, I don't know, or at least repeal the rule that he alleges requires them in certain settings. He is doing so without the public comment period, or not allowing it, disregarding it, what have you. I don't know. And this once again, he's purporting to do something about low flow shower heads, but in doing so violates all administrative law and all the rulemaking process. So it may turn out that yes, he'll be sued over this too, and yes, lose that case as well, and yes, appeal that case, but all in the pursuit of what? Getting rid of shower heads that he doesn't like. I mean, what a waste of time. But true, if you parse it enough, it turns out there's a real Administrative Procedure Act problem with the way he's alleging that he's fighting for your shower rights somehow. I don't know. The guy's a complete wackadoodle, and can't be rid of him soon enough. Okay, that's it for our show today. We can't be rid of this show soon enough because the sooner we get rid of it, the sooner we're in the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam. And he's got his own collection of crazy stories to bring to you, and I'm sure we'll be covering bases that we missed. Let's take a look.
From networdsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
It looks to me like the focus is where it ought to be, with the furious judge who dropped the hammer on Trump over his offshore gulag scheme. More details of the excoriating opinions being issued by Judge Zinis, by Judge Boasberg. We didn't get the chance to focus on it. That's what Justice has got at the top of the show. Stay tuned, and we'll see you tomorrow.